My name is Dr. Marcus Raymond Webb. I'm 73 years old, and for 47 years, I served as a cardiac surgeon at Detroit Mercy Hospital in Michigan. If you're hearing this story right now, it's because I need you to understand something that damn near destroyed me from the inside out. My own son, Darnell, my only child, tried to murder me in cold blood. Yeah, you heard that right. For 3 straight months, he switched out my prescribed heart medication with fake pills, counting down the days until my heart gave out so he could cash in on my life insurance and claim my condo on Belle Isle. But he forgot one critical thing. I'm a doctor, and half the medical professionals in Detroit learned everything they know from me. It all started on a Wednesday morning in September. I woke up at 6:45 with this crushing sensation in my chest. That pressure I knew too damn well. I'd survived my heart attack 7 months earlier, and since then, I'd been religious about taking my digoxin, my metoprolol, and my daily aspirin. But that morning, while I was brewing my strong black coffee, the way I like it, I felt something was seriously wrong. The shortness of breath had been getting worse over the past 2 weeks. Climbing the 4 flights of stairs to my Belle Isle condo had become pure torture. My ankles were swelling more each day, and I'd wake up in the middle of the night, gasping for air like I was drowning. It's normal after a heart attack, I told myself. You're old, Marcus. Accept reality. But there's one thing I learned in 47 years of operating on hearts. Never ignore your medical intuition. When something doesn't add up, you investigate. Period. That Wednesday, I called Dr. Kenneth Brown's office in Midtown Detroit. Kenneth had been my resident back in 2003. Now he ran his own successful cardiology practice. I explained my symptoms over the phone, and his voice got serious real quick. Dr. Webb, get here immediately. On the drive to his office, I remembered all those times I'd taught Kenneth how to read EKGs. Look closely at the waves, Dr. Brown. I used to tell him when he was young and eager. The heart always tells the truth. You just gotta know how to listen. Kenneth greeted me with that respectful nod I always got from my former students. His office was slit diplomas covering the walls, a beautiful view of the Detroit River skyline. He examined me for a solid hour. EKG, echocardiogram, full blood panel. The results left him confused as hell. Dr. Webb, he said, reviewing the papers for the 3rd time, your cardiac markers are way off. Way off. But according to your file, you're taking all your medications exactly as prescribed. That's correct, Kenneth. Darnell picks them up for me every month, and I take them exactly on schedule. Kenneth frowned hard. It's strange, Doc. Your symptoms suggest you're not receiving proper medication. It's almost like you're not taking anything at all. Those words echoed in my head the entire drive home. As if I'm not taking anything at all, I slowly climbed those 4 flights of stairs to my apartment, feeling my heart protest with every step. Once inside, I collapsed into my favorite leather recliner, the brown one Victoria bought me for my 55th birthday. From there, I could see my wife's photo on the mantel, smiling with that warmth I miss every single day. What do you think, baby? I asked her picture. Am I losing my mind? But an experienced doctor's paranoia has a foundation in facts. I went to my medicine cabinet and pulled out all the medication bottles Darnell had brought me last month. I examined them carefully under my desk lamp, the same desk where I'd written thousands of prescriptions to save lives over the years. The bottles looked normal, seals intact, pharmacy labels correct. But when I looked closer, I noticed something strange. Tiny marks on the caps, like they'd been opened and glued back shut. The safety seals showed slight DEFO arm, ATIONC dot. My heart started pounding faster. Carefully, I opened one of the digoxin bottles. The pills looked exactly like the original, same white color, same shape, same size. but there was something about their texture that didn't sit right with me. I held them between my fingers and smelled them. They lacked that faint chemical scent pharmaceuticals always have. My God, I whispered. I couldn't sleep that night. I tossed and turned, my doctor's mind connecting dots I didn't want to connect. Darnell had been so insistent about handling my medications after the heart attack. "Rest up, Pops. I got everything covered," he'd told me. "It's the least I can do after all you've done for me." It had seemed so thoughtful, so mature. After years of watching him fail at business after business, my son was finally showing responsibility. Or so I thought the next morning. I called Dr. Raymond Mitchell. Raymond had been one of my best students back in the 90s and was now chief pharmacologist at Henry Ford Hospital. "Raymond," I said, "I need a discreet favor." Very discreet. We met in his lab at 7 o'clock that evening, after everyone else had left. I handed him 3 pills from each of my medications. "Analyze these, Raymond. I need to know exactly what they contain. And please don't mention this to anyone." Raymond looked at me with that serious expression he'd learned during his residency. "Dr. Webb, do you suspect something?" "I hope to God I'm wrong," I replied. "But 47 years of experience tells me something ain't right." The next 2 days were the longest of my life. Every time I looked at those pills in my cabinet, I felt this sick mixture of disbelief and terror. Was it actually possible that my own son was trying to kill me? I remembered when Darnell was a boy, maybe 9 years old, visiting me at the hospital. He'd sit quietly in a chair in my office, watching me examine patients. "Dad, do you really save lives?" He'd ask with those bright, admiring eyes. "Yes, son," I'd answer. "It's the most important work in the world." After every successful surgery, Darnell would run up and hug me tight. "My dad's a hero." He'd shout down the hospital hallways. The nurses would laugh and sneak him candy. He was so damn proud to be Dr. Webb's son. When did that admiration disappear? When did pride turn into greed? On Friday morning, my phone rang. It was Raymond, and his voice sounded tense. "Doctor, I need to see you right away. Come to the lab now." I grabbed my coat and made it to Henry Ford Hospital in 15 minutes. Raymond was waiting for me with an expression I'd never seen on his face before, a mix of horror and disbelief. "Dr. Webb," he began, holding papers with trembling hands, "the results are here. I don't know how to tell you this. Tell me straight, Raymond. I'm a doctor. I can handle it." Raymond took a deep breath. "The pills you brought me contain 0 active ingredients. Nothing. They're just compressed starch, crushed chalk, and food coloring. Perfect placebos. But placebos nonetheless." I felt like I'd been hit in the chest with a sledgehammer. My legs went weak, and I had to sit down in the nearest chair. My whole world tilted in that moment. "You're absolutely sure?" I managed to ask, my voice cracking. "Completely sure. I ran every sample 3 times. Doc, whoever's been giving you these fake pills has been doing it for months, judging by your declining health." The reality crashed over me like a tidal wave. My son, my only son, the person I trusted most in this world, had been systematically, coldly trying to kill me with the patience of a professional assassin. Imagine, my friend, the moment when a man who dedicated 47 years to saving lives discovers his own child has been trying to take his for 3 months. It's a pain that has no name. It's a betrayal that breaks something in your soul that can never be repaired. I drove home in a state of shock. Every block from the hospital to my Belle Isle condo felt like walking through a nightmare. The streets of Detroit that I loved so much, the historic buildings. The riverfront, everything looked different, darker. Like I'd discovered I was living in a world of lies not once home. I examined all the medication bottles again with new eyes. Now that I knew what to look for, the evidence was crystal clear. Every bottle had been opened and resealed. The inner cotton showed signs of tampering. The pills that had seemed normal before now obviously looked different, more chalky, with a weird texture. Darnell had been careful. He'd obtained nearly perfect replicas. Somebody with pharmaceutical experience had done this work. This wasn't some amateur operation. I sat at my desk and pulled out a legal pad. With the precision of a forensic physician, I began documenting everything: dates, observations, symptoms. Every detail could matter. Then came the most painful memory of all. 3 weeks ago, Darnell had come over for dinner. We'd cooked Detroit-style coney dogs together, his favorite meal since childhood. While we ate, he asked, "Pops, how you feeling? The meds helping?" I'd replied, "I feel worse every day, son. But the doctor says it's normal after a heart attack." Darnell had smiled. A smile I now understood wasn't compassion. It was satisfaction. "Don't worry, Pops. Everything gonna be all right soon." Soon. That word now had a sinister meaning. Darnell was waiting for me to die soon. That night, sitting in my recliner, staring at the faked pills spread across my coffee table, I felt something shift inside me. The pain of the betrayed father slowly. The man who dedicated his life to precision in the operating room wasn't about to let this crime go unpunished. Darnell had made one fundamental mistake. He'd underestimated his father. He'd forgotten I wasn't just some sick old man with a bad heart. I was Dr. Marcus Raymond Webb, the man who trained half the doctors in Detroit, the one with connections in every hospital, every lab, and the entire medical legal system in Michigan. If he wanted to play the game of life and death, he was about to discover his father knew the rules better than anyone. That night, sitting in my study surrounded by evidence of Darnell's betrayal, my mind traveled back in time. 45 years ago, when Victoria told me she was pregnant, I remember I was in the kitchen of our small apartment in Midtown, making coffee after a brutal 24-hour shift at Detroit Mercy. "Marcus," she said, with that shy smile I loved, "we're going to be parents." In that moment, everything changed. I wasn't just working for the two of us anymore. I was working for our future child. From that day forward, every dollar I earned had a destination: to give our coming child everything I never had. I came from nothing. My father worked on the assembly line at the Ford plant. My mother cleaned houses in Grosse Pointe. I studied medicine on scholarships, working nights as an orderly in nursing homes to pay for my textbooks. I swore my son would never know that struggle, that uncertainty of not knowing if there'd be food on the table. When Darnell was born in 1976, he was the most beautiful baby at Detroit Mercy Hospital. He had his mother's big eyes, and I swore he had the Webb intelligence. The nurses adored him. "This boy's gonna be a doctor like his daddy," they'd say while holding him. From his first months, I started saving for his future. Not randomly, with military discipline. Every month, I set aside exactly 30% of my income into a special account I called Darnell's Future. Victoria would laugh at my obsession with that notebook where I recorded every deposit. "You'll see," I'd tell her as I wrote down the numbers. "When Darnell grows up, he'll have everything he needs." I worked double shifts, weekend calls, private consultations late into the night. My practice in Midtown was packed because I had a reputation for being thorough and honest. Every extra dollar went straight into that sacred account. By the time Darnell turned 6, we'd saved $180,000. Victoria wanted us to buy a new car, but I told her, "Baby, the car can wait. Our son's education cannot." Darnell was a brilliant kid. I swear he could read by age 4. By 7, he was solving math problems that amazed his teachers. We enrolled him in Detroit Country Day School, the most prestigious private school in Michigan. The tuition cost what most families earned in 4 months. But it was worth every penny to see my son come home with honor roll certificates and academic achievement awards. On Saturday mornings, Darnell would come with me to the hospital. He'd wear a little white lab coat Victoria had sewn for him and walk the halls like he owned the place. "Good morning, Dr. Darnell," the nurses would say, and he'd reply with the comical seriousness of a child, "Good morning. I need to check on my patients." Those were the happiest years of my life, watching that intelligent, ambitious boy grow, knowing he had a bright future ahead. Every sacrifice made sense when I saw him studying at his desk, concentrated on his books like a little scholar dot in 1998. We decided to buy the condo on Belle Isle. It was an impossible dream for most black families in Detroit. 1,800 square foot apartment in the best building on the island, with luxury finishes and a panoramic view of the Detroit River. The price was astronomical, $750,000. "Are you crazy, Marcus?" my brother asked when I told him. Nobody in our family has ever lived someplace like that. But I had a vision. Darnell needed to grow up in an environment of success, surrounded by successful people. He needed to see that hard work and education could take you to the highest places. That condo wasn't just a house, it was a statement of principles. I paid half in cash with 20 years of savings. I financed the rest over 10 years, working harder than I'd ever worked in my life. Surgeries from 5:30 in the morning until 11 o'clock at night. Weekend consultations, speaking engagements in other states. Victoria barely saw me, but she understood the sacrifice. "It's for Darnell," she'd tell me when I arrived home, exhausted at midnight. "All of this is for our son." The day we moved into the new condo, Darnell was 18 and about to enter college. I remember him standing on the balcony, looking out at the city and the river, shouting, "Dad, I can see the whole world from here." His happiness made every extra hour of work worth it. By then, Darnell had decided to study business administration at the University of Michigan's Ross School of Business, the most expensive and prestigious business school in the Midwest. The semester tuition cost more than the average worker's annual salary, but I never hesitated to pay it. "I want to be an entrepreneur, Pops," he told me during his freshman year. "I want to build my own company and be successful like you." Hearing that filled me with pride. My son wouldn't just have a profession, he'd have ambition. He'd be a leader, a job creator, somebody important in the community. During his college years, Darnell lived like a king. He had his own car, a brand new Escalade I bought him for his 21st birthday. His friends envied him. He went out every weekend, traveled during breaks to Miami and Vegas, wore designer clothes head to toe. I never denied him anything. "Give him the best," Victoria advised me. "A son who feels loved and valued becomes a successful son." But there were signs that now, with the sting of betrayal, I can see crystal clear. Darnell never asked how much things cost. He never showed genuine gratitude for the sacrifices we made. To him, money was just something that appeared whenever he needed it. When he graduated in 2002, we threw a spectacular party in the ballroom of the MGM Grand Detroit. 100 guests, live band, formal dinner. I spent $18,000 on that celebration. But seeing Darnell in his cap and gown, Bachelor of Business Administration diploma in hand, filled me with indescribable satisfaction. "Now the real work begins," I told him that night as we toasted with aged bourbon. "Now you build your own empire." The first few years after college were rough. Darnell couldn't land a job at the major corporations where he'd interned. "The positions are all connected, Pops," he complained. "It's all about who you know." After 9 months of searching, he decided it was better to start his own business. "Pops, I got an incredible idea," he told me one afternoon in 2003. "I'm opening an upscale soul food restaurant in Greektown. I've studied the market. It's a guaranteed hit. The initial investment was $85,000, almost all the money we'd saved that year. Victoria had doubts, but I believed in my son. He's young and ambitious, I told her. All successful entrepreneurs start by taking risks. The restaurant was called Victoria's Table, and for 3 months it seemed promising. Darnell worked day and night, overseeing every detail. He seemed to have found his calling. I ate there twice a week, proud to see my son running his own business. But by the 4th month, problems started. Darnell had no real administrative experience. Costs skyrocketed. Staff were stealing. Customers weren't coming like expected by the 6th month. The restaurant was hemorrhaging money. Pops, I need another $25,000 to save the business. He begged me one night with tears in his eyes. It's only temporary, just till I turn things around. I gave it to him, of course. But it didn't help. 3 months later, Victoria's Table permanently closed its doors, $85,000 lost. 2 years of savings turned to nothing. Darnell was devastated. I'm sorry, Pops, I failed you. But I consoled him like I always did. It doesn't matter, son. Failure is part of learning. Next time will be different. The next time came in 2005. A real estate investment company focused on Detroit foreclosures. Pops, the city's providing tons of incentives for property rehabilitation. It's guaranteed money. This time, the investment was bigger, $140,000. We sold some of Victoria's jewelry. I took out a loan against the condo, all to believe in Darnell, to give him another chance to prove himself. The real estate company lasted 7 months. Problems with contractors, zoning issues, tenants who destroyed properties. Darnell didn't have the experience or maturity to handle such complex business without another failure. Another 6-figure loss. But what hurt most wasn't the money. It was watching Darnell change after these failures. He became resentful, bitter. He blamed the economy, racist business partners, unfair competition. He never blamed himself, and the constant requests for money began. Pops, I need money for a security deposit on a new place. Pops, my Escalade broke down. I need another ride. Pops, I found an incredible investment opportunity. Every time I asked for specific details about these opportunities, he'd get evasive. It's complicated to explain. Pops, just trust me. By 2012, I'd lost count of how much money I'd given Darnell. Hundreds of thousands of dollars vanished into failed projects. Personal expenses, phantom investments. Victoria, who was battling ovarian cancer by then, told me in her weak voice, Marcus, you gotta set limits. But I couldn't. He was my only son, my only family after Victoria died. When she passed in 2013, Darnell was my only comfort. He came to the funeral, hugged me, cried with me. Pops, now we only got each other, he told me. I'll always be here for you. What bitter irony, my friend. The son I'd sacrificed everything for whom I'd worked myself to exhaustion for 40 years, for whom I'd spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, was now counting the days until my death. After my heart attack, when Darnell offered to handle my medications, I thought he'd finally matured. Pops, you took care of us your whole life. Now it's my turn to take care of you. He told me with a smile I believed was genuine. The first few months after the heart attack, Darnell came to dinner with me twice a week. He'd arrive with bags from the pharmacy, organize my pills into weekly dispensers, and make sure I took everything on schedule. Did you take your morning dose, Pops? He'd ask during dinner. You forget your digoxin this afternoon? I was genuinely moved by his attention. For the first time in years, Darnell seemed concerned about someone other than himself. We'd cook his favorite childhood dishes together, barbecue ribs, collard greens, mac and cheese. We'd talk about happy memories and plans for the future. When you're fully recovered, we could take that trip to Africa you always wanted, he'd say while watching me religiously take my fake pills. Ghana, Nigeria, South Africa. You deserve it, Pops, after a lifetime of hard work. Now I understand every one of those dinners was a twisted performance. Darnell wasn't planning future trips with me. He was calculating how much longer he'd have to wait until the fake pills did their job. During those evenings, I'd mention my plans to renovate the condo, update my will, or maybe liquidate some properties. Darnell listened with fake attention, asking specific questions about my investments, bank accounts, legal documents. It's important to have everything in order, Pops, he'd say. You never know what might happen. Yeah, you never know your own son might be planning your death. I'll confess something, my friend. Darnell's betrayal hurt worse than Victoria's death, worse than all my professional failures, worse than any material loss I'd ever suffered, because Victoria died loving me, fighting to stay alive with me. Darnell was deliberately killing me with premeditation, calculating every fake pill as one more step toward his inheritance. 45 years of fatherhood. Hundreds of thousands of dollars invested in his education, businesses, whims. Thousands of hours of extra work to give him everything he wanted. Decades of unconditional love, constant support, infinite forgiveness for his failures. And he repaid me by trying to murder me. That's the bitterest truth a father can face. Discovering the son you gave everything to considers your death the best investment he can make in his future. The morning after receiving Raymond's lab results, I woke up with mental clarity I hadn't had in months. The initial shock had passed. Now the surgeon in me was taking control. 47 years of professional experience had taught me that when facing a crisis, you must act with method and precision. My first call was to attorney James Patterson. James had been my college roommate at Howard University before I transferred to Wayne State Medical School. Now he was one of Detroit's most respected lawyers, specializing in criminal prosecution and defense. What I liked most about James was his brutal honesty, something he'd had since we were 19 years old. James, I told him over the phone, I need to see you urgently. It's extremely delicate. We met that afternoon at his office downtown. The building was impressive marble floors, mahogany everywhere. A seriousness you could feel in the air. James greeted me in his corner office, surrounded by law books and certificates. From 40 years of successful practice. Marcus, he said after listening to the whole story, this is attempted murder. But we need solid, irrefutable evidence. The lab testimony is critical, but it's not enough. James walked to his window, overlooking the Detroit River. Look, brother, I know how hard this must be. But if you really want to proceed, we need to build a case no judge can dismiss. He explained we needed to establish 3 elements: opportunity, motive, and method. Opportunity was clear. Darnell was the one buying and managing my medications. Motive was obvious: inheritance and life insurance. But method required more investigation. Where does Darnell get the fake pills? How does he obtain them? Are other people involved? James asked, taking notes on his legal pad. And most importantly, we need him to admit his involvement himself. That sentence engraved itself in my mind. We need him to admit his involvement himself. I left James's office with a clear mission. On the drive home, my medical mind began planning every step like it was a complex surgery. Every detail had to be perfect. Every move calculated. The next day, I went to an electronics store at Somerset Mall. I felt strange buying a device to spy on my own son. But there was no alternative. I chose a small digital voice recorder, the size of a matchbox, with 8 hours of high-quality audio capacity. It's for recording medical lectures. I explained to the young salesman. Lying was becoming an unpleasant but necessary skill. For 3 days, I practiced using the device. I turned it on and off until I'd mastered every button. I tested different locations in my study to find the spot with the best acoustics. Like any medical procedure, preparation was crucial for success. I also carefully planned what I'd say to Darnell. It had to sound natural, convincing. It couldn't feel like an interrogation, or he'd get defensive. I needed to create an atmosphere of trust, make him comfortable enough to speak freely. I decided to invite him to dinner on a Friday evening. I told him I wanted to thank him for all his help with the medications, that I was feeling better and wanted to celebrate. Darnell accepted immediately, like he always did when it involved a free meal. That afternoon, I prepared slow-cooked barbecue ribs, his favorite dish since childhood. While the meat cooked in the oven, I pulled out a bottle of aged Bourbonnais Reserve, bottle saved for special occasions. What irony that this special occasion was setting a trap for my own son. The bourbon had particular significance for us. It's what we drunk when Darnell turned 21, when he graduated college, when he opened his first business. We'd always toasted with bourbon during important moments in his life. At 6 o'clock sharp, Darnell arrived on time, as always. He wore a smile I now recognize as false, but which at the time still partially deceived me. "How's my favorite Pops doing?" he said with forced cheerfulness. "Real good, son," I replied, embracing him like I'd done thousands of times. "I feel stronger every day, thanks to the medications you get for me." The recorder was hidden under some medical journals on the coffee table, right next to where Darnell always sat. I'd tested the position multiple times, the sound captured perfectly. We started the evening talking about trivial things. I asked about his current work, his friends, his plans. Darnell was relaxed, confident. We served the ribs with mac and cheese and collard greens, exactly how he liked them since childhood. After dinner, I brought out the bourbon bottle and 2 crystal glasses that had belonged to Victoria. "Let's toast, son," I said, "to your dedication taking such good care of your father." Darnell smiled and raised his glass. "To many more years together, Pops." Those words pierced me like a scalpel. Many more years together, when he was hoping for the exact opposite. After the first sip, I began with the questions I'd rehearsed. I had to be gradual, subtle. "Hey, Darnell, I'm curious. Which pharmacy do you get my medications from?" I was talking to Cousin Michael the other day, and he said he gets special discounts at Walgreens for his dad's meds. Darnell took a long gulp of bourbon before replying. "I go to different pharmacies, Pops, wherever it's cheapest." "But don't you have a regular one?" "These medications are highly specialized. They aren't sold everywhere." I noticed Darnell shifting uncomfortably in his chair. His hands started playing with the bourbon glass, spinning it nervously. "Yeah, I got my spots." "Don't worry about it," I pressed gently. "It's just that the other day I was talking to Dr. Brown, my cardiologist, and he mentioned there's lots of counterfeit drugs on the market. It scared me, you know. He recommended only buying from certified pharmacies with all their permits in order." Darnell visibly tensed. "Pops, why all the questions?" "I know what I'm doing. I've been getting your meds for months, and nothing bad's happened." "You're right, son. I just want to be sure. These medications are expensive. I don't want you getting ripped off. They are expensive." Darnell suddenly exploded with vehemence that surprised me. "Every month I spend a fortune on your pills. The cost of keeping you alive is bleeding me dry." That sentence was perfectly recorded on the device. "The cost of keeping you alive is bleeding me dry." But the money for medications came from my own bank account. I gave him the exact amount they cost according to prescriptions. "Bleeding you dry?" I asked calmly. "But I give you exactly what they cost, based on the prices you tell me." Darnell realized his mistake immediately. His face flushed red, and he started stammering. "Yeah, sure, Pops. I mean, it's a lot of money in general. It'd be a lot for any family. But the damage was done." Darnell had revealed his true attitude. He saw caring for my health. I decided to press further. "Son, could you bring me the receipts from the last few purchases? I want to see exactly how much we're spending. Maybe I can talk to my Medicare provider about covering more costs." Darnell nearly choked on his bourbon. "The receipts? I don't know if I still have them. I don't usually keep those papers." "What do you mean you don't have them?" "Those are tax deductions, Darnell. Medical expenses are fully deductible. I don't like dealing with paperwork, Pops. You know I'm bad with that stuff." It was a lie, and we both knew it. Darnell had studied business administration. He knew perfectly well the importance of keeping receipts. The conversation grew increasingly tense. Darnell began drinking faster, refilling his bourbon glass like it was water. I kept the recorder running, capturing every word, every telling pause. "Darnell," I said, simulating the warmest voice I could manage, "I appreciate you handling my medication so much since the heart attack. It's been such a relief knowing you're taking care of everything. I don't know what I'd do without you." I hoped those words would calm him, maybe even trigger some guilt. But Darnell only replied, "It's the least I can do, Pops. After everything you've done for me." Another phrase with double meaning perfectly captured by the recorder dot. By the end of the evening, Darnell left earlier than usual. He was nervous, uncomfortable. He said goodbye quickly and practically ran out of the condo. When I listened to the recording that night, I had enough material to establish a pattern of suspicious behavior. But James was right. I needed more evidence. The next day, I called Dr. Sharon Harris. Sharon had been one of my most brilliant students in the 80s. Now she was director of forensic toxicology at the Michigan State Police Crime Lab. "Dr. Harris," I said, using the formal address I always used with former students on professional matters, "I need your help on a very delicate case." Sharon received me at her lab on Tuesday morning. The place impressed me. State-of-the-art equipment. Electron microscopes, mass spectrometers. Everything a scientific detective could need. I handed her samples of all my fake medications and explained the situation without mentioning. The suspect was my son. "I need to know exactly what these pills contain, and if it's possible to determine their origin." Sharon, with the efficiency she'd shown since student days, immediately got to work. "Dr. Webb, this'll take a few days, but I promise a complete analysis." 3 days later, Sharon called with results. "Doctor, this is very serious. The pills aren't just fake. They're professionally manufactured counterfeits. Whoever did this has pharmacological knowledge and access to industrial tablet presses. Can you determine the source?" "I'm working with contacts in the pharmaceutical black market. This kind of operation isn't common. Very few people in Detroit are capable of making such exact replicas." A week later, Sharon had concrete information. "Doctor, I found the source. There's a clandestine lab in southwest Detroit producing counterfeit drugs for distribution to illegal pharmacies. The owner is named Terrence Bishop. He's a pharmaceutical chemist, but his license was revoked 6 years ago for selling adulterated drugs. How can we connect this Bishop to my case?" "I already did," Sharon said with a small smile. "I spoke with police contacts. Bishop admitted that for the last 3 months, he's been selling digoxin and metoprolol replicas to a young man who paid cash. The description perfectly matches the photo you showed me. It was Darnell, without doubt. Now I had the complete chain. Darnell was buying fake pills from a clandestine lab, bringing them home, playing the devoted son, and waiting for lack of real medication to kill me slowly. The next step was involving judicial authority. Through Sharon, I contacted Assistant Prosecutor Angela Freeman, another former student from forensic medicine courses I'd taught at Wayne State Medical School. Angela had been an exceptional student. One of those who asked intelligent questions and always sought to understand not only the what but the why of every forensic procedure. Now, 20 years later, she was one of Michigan's most respected figures in the judicial system. "Dr. Webb," she said when we met in her office, "this case is complex because it involves family. Are you completely sure you want to proceed legally?" That question tormented me for weeks. Did I really want to send my own son to prison? But there was no other way. I spent entire nights awake, staring at the ceiling of my bedroom, remembering the boy Darnell had been, the 9-year-old who hugged me when I came home tired from the hospital, the teenager who bragged to his friends that his dad was a surgeon, the young college man full of dreams and ambitions. But then I remembered the fake pills, the 3 months of declining health, the calculated coldness with which Darnell had planned my death. This wasn't an impulsive decision on his part. It was a methodical plan executed with a professional killer's patience. One afternoon, sitting in the recliner where I'd consoled Darnell after so many business failures, I made my final decision. I called Angela Freeman. "Prosecutor, proceed with the case. My son tried to kill me. That cannot be forgiven, regardless of family ties." Angela assembled the case file with consummate professional efficiency. She had test results from Raymond Mitchell's lab confirming my medicines were placebos. She had forensic analysis from Sharon Harris identifying the source of fake pills. She had the recording of my conversation with Darnell where he contradicted himself about medication costs. She had testimony from Terrence Bishop, the illegal manufacturer, identifying Darnell as his client. "It's a solid case, Doctor," Angela assured me. "Any judge will see sufficient elements to prosecute for attempted aggravated murder." But I wanted absolute certainty. "Angela, is there any possibility this is a misunderstanding? That Darnell was tricked by someone else?" Angela reviewed all documents again. "Doctor, your son paid cash for falsified medications from a clandestine lab. He did it monthly for 3 months. He knew exactly what he was buying and what he was using it for. There's no way this was an accident." That confirmation both reassured and devastated me. My paternal instinct wanted to find an alternative explanation, anything to exonerate Darnell. But my rational mind, trained through 4 decades of medicine, knew Angela was right. Darnell had tried to murder me. The days leading to his arrest were the hardest of my life. Darnell continued visiting, continued bringing fake medicines, continued feigning concern for my health. Every conversation felt like a macabre play where we both acted roles we knew were false. "How you feeling, Pops?" he'd ask while organizing my fake pills in the weekly dispenser. "Better, son," I'd reply. "Thanks to you." It was dialogue of mutual lies. He knew he was slowly poisoning me. I knew that he knew. But we both maintained the charade. One night, 2 days before the arrest, Darnell asked something that chilled my blood. "Pops, have you updated your will since the heart attack?" "Why you asking?" I replied, keeping my voice neutral. "Well, a friend told me after a heart attack, it's important to have all your documents in order. Just in case, you know." Darnell was making concrete plans for my death. He wasn't just killing me anymore, he was already thinking about subsequent paperwork. That conversation eliminated any residual doubt I had about proceeding with the complaint. My son wasn't just a potential killer. He was an impatient killer. I told him I'd updated my will, that everything was in order. Darnell smiled with satisfaction. He probably thought his plan was going perfectly. If you're listening, my friend, understand something important. Justice sometimes requires decisions that go against our most basic instincts. A father naturally protects his son, no matter what he's done. But there are lines that cannot be crossed, betrayals that cannot be forgiven. When someone tries to kill you deliberately, systematically, for months, that person ceases to be your family. They become your enemy, regardless of shared blood. Darnell had chosen to be my assassin. Now I chose to be his nemesis. On Thursday, April 12, 2018, at 6:30 in the morning, my phone rang. It was Darnell, but his voice sounded completely different from any tone I'd heard before. It wasn't the voice of the affectionate son he pretended to be, nor that of the failed businessman begging for money. It was the voice of a cornered animal. "Pops, you gotta help me. The police are here. They saying I'm being arrested for attempted murder. This is crazy. You gotta call your lawyer and fix this misunderstanding." I sat on the edge of my bed, listening as my son screamed into the phone while officers read him his rights. After 47 years of taking emergency calls at the hospital, I recognized the sound of genuine desperation perfectly. But this time, I felt no compassion. I felt relief. "Darnell," I said in a calm voice, "I can't help you. This isn't a misunderstanding." There was terrible silence on the other end. Then I heard the phone being taken away. An officer spoke to me. "Dr. Webb, we're from the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office. Your son is being arrested for attempted murder." That morning, I dressed in the navy blue suit I wore for important medical conferences. If I was going to testify against my own son, I'd do it with dignity the moment required. I carefully combed my hair, put on the tie Victoria had given me for our 25th anniversary, and looked in the mirror. The man looking back was 73 years old, but his eyes showed determination of someone who'd made the most difficult decision of his life. Angela. Freeman called 2 hours later. "Doctor, Darnell's at the precinct. His lawyer, Attorney Davis, is asking for bail on a lesser charge. But we're pushing for aggravated attempted murder. He won't be getting out easily." Over following days, local papers began covering the case. "Prominent cardiac surgeon accuses son of attempted murder with fake meds," headlines read. It was humiliating seeing our names in the news, but it was also necessary. People had to know these crimes didn't go unpunished, regardless of family ties. Darnell's first interrogation was 3 days after his arrest. Angela allowed me to observe from an adjacent room with one-way glass. Seeing my son sitting at that metal table, handcuffed, dressed in the orange jumpsuit of Wayne County Jail, broke my heart despite everything he'd done. Attorney Davis, a young lawyer Darnell had hired with money he'd probably stolen from me, tried building a defense based on ignorance. My client didn't know the medicines were fake, he constantly repeated. He was a victim of fraud by the supplier. But Angela was relentless. She'd done her homework perfectly. "Your client visited Terrence Bishop's clandestine lab for 3 consecutive months. He paid cash specifically for cardiac medication replicas. How do you explain an innocent person deliberately seeking out an illegal lab to buy fake medicines?" Darnell was sweating profusely. His hands trembled as he tried responding. I thought they were cheaper generic medicines. Bishop told me they were brand name equivalents." "Then why didn't you ask Bishop for sales receipts? Why did you lie to your father about where you bought medications? Why did you never save proof of purchase?" With every question from Angela, Darnell sank further. His answers became contradictory, nervous. It was evident he was lying poorly. "Look, prosecutor," Darnell finally said, "my pops is very old. He's got a heart condition. Sometimes he gets confused, imagines things. Maybe he changed his own medicines and doesn't remember now." That was the last straw. Hearing Darnell suggest I had senile dementia, I'd invented the whole case due to mental confusion filled. Me with cold fury I'd never felt. Angela looked at Darnell with professional contempt. "Mr. Darnell Webb, are you suggesting a cardiac surgeon with 47 years of experience, who trained half the doctors in Detroit, cannot distinguish between real and fake medicine?" Darnell didn't know how to respond. The legal process lasted 5 months. 5 months during which Darnell continued trying to contact me from jail. sending letters that alternated between pathetic pleas and threats. "Pops, you got me rotting in jail because of your pride," he wrote in one letter with sloppy handwriting on cheap paper. "When I get out, there'll be nothing left of our family. I hope you're happy." In another letter, he was more direct. "If you go through with this, we'll never reconcile. You'll die alone and bitter with no family." I saved all his letters as additional evidence of his manipulative character. The trial began on a Monday in September. The Wayne County Circuit courtroom was packed. Medical colleagues, neighbors, journalists, distant relatives I hadn't seen in years. Everyone wanted to witness the spectacle of a father criminally accusing his own son. Darnell arrived dressed in a gray suit. I immediately recognized the same one I'd bought him for his college graduation. His strategy was obvious. Try to look like the devoted, successful son he'd never truly been. Lead prosecutor Thomas Richardson presented the case with surgical precision. He began by explaining my medical career, my impeccable reputation, 47 years of saving lives. Then he described my heart attack, medical prescription of specific drugs, and how Darnell had voluntarily offered to handle purchasing them. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Richardson said solemnly, "the defendant not only tried to kill his father, he did it in the cruelest way possible. Slowly, making him believe he was receiving medical treatment while actually poisoning him with calculated negligence." Attorney Davis's defense was pathetic. He tried presenting Darnell as a confused son tricked by unscrupulous criminals. "My client is the victim of a pharmaceutical scam," he claimed. He genuinely believed he was buying legal generic medicines. But when witness testimonies began, Darnell's defense completely crumbled. Raymond Mitchell took the stand dressed in his chief pharmacologist white coat. He explained to the jury the process he'd followed to analyze my medicines, equipment used, results obtained. The pills contained no active ingredients, he concluded. They were placebos professionally crafted to deceive a cardiac patient. Sharon Harris was even more devastating. As a forensic expert, she presented evidence directly connecting fake pills found in my home to Terrence Bishop's clandestine lab. "The samples are identical in composition, manufacturing method, and source materials," she testified. "There's no doubt they came from the same illegal source." Dr. Kenneth Brown, my cardiologist, explained to the jury medical consequences of abruptly suspending cardiac medication. A patient in Dr. Webb's condition, without his real medicines, would have died within 3 to 6 months maximum, he said gravely. What the defendant did amounts to a slow death sentence. But the most impactful moment came when Angela asked to play the recording of my conversation with Darnell. The room fell into complete silence as my son's voice came through. "The audio system speakers. They are expensive. Every month I spend a fortune on your pills. The cost of keeping you alive is bleeding me dry." When those words echoed in the courtroom, I saw several jurors exchange disgusted glances. The coldness with which Darnell referred to the cost of keeping me alive was evident to everyone. The prosecutor paused the recording. "Ladies and gentlemen, note the defendant speaks of keeping you alive, referring to his father as if he were an economic burden, and speaks of the money as if it were his, when in reality, Dr. Webb gave him the exact amount needed to buy real medications." The recording continued. Darnell's nervous voice when I asked about receipts, his contradictions about pharmacies where he supposedly bought them, his irritation when I insisted on details. Everything was exposed to the jury. Darnell, sitting at the defense table, had his head bowed. His lawyer tried taking notes, but it was evident he had no way to refute such compelling evidence. When it was Darnell's turn to testify in his own defense, it was a disaster. He took the stand visibly nervous, sweating despite air conditioning. "I never meant to hurt my pops," he began in a trembling voice. He's the most important thing I got in my life. This is all a terrible misunderstanding. The prosecutor tore him apart in cross-examination. Mr. Webb, why did you specifically visit a clandestine lab to buy fake medicines if your intention was helping your father? I didn't know it was clandestine. Didn't it seem suspicious that Mr. Bishop operated from a basement in southwest Detroit with no visible licenses, demanding cash only? I thought, didn't it seem strange these generic medications cost $500 when originals cost $15,000? Darnell had no coherent answers. He contradicted himself constantly, stammering. He looked exactly like what he was, a desperate liar trying to save his skin. The most traumatic moment came during closing arguments. The prosecutor had finished his devastating presentation. The defense attorney had made one last pathetic attempt to sow doubt. The judge was about to call recess when Darnell abruptly rose from his seat. "Pops!" he shouted, turning toward where I sat in the witness gallery. "Pops, forgive me. I didn't mean to do this. It was a stupid mistake, a crazy thing. Drop the charges, please." The entire room fell silent. Bailiffs approached Darnell to restrain him, but the judge motioned for them to wait. All eyes turned toward me. Awaiting my reaction, I slowly rose from my seat. I walked until I stood in front of Darnell, separated only by the railing dividing the gallery from the trial area. My son had tears streaming down his... For one moment, one painful second, my father's heart wanted to yield. I saw the 5-year-old boy who ran to me when I got home from the hospital, the teenager who bragged to friends about his doctor dad, the young college man full of dreams. But then I remembered the fake pills, 3 months of physical agony, the calculated coldness with which he'd planned my death, and the false smile as he watched me take placebos night after night. "Darnell," I said in a clear voice that resonated throughout the room. "For 47 years, I dedicated my life to saving lives. You dedicated 3 months to trying to take mine. Let the court decide what to do with that." Darnell collapsed into his chair. His lawyer tried calming him, but my son began sobbing uncontrollably. "You're a monster," he suddenly screamed with rage I'd never seen. "You controlled me with your money my whole life. You never let me be independent. You were always a tyrant." "Order in the court," the judge shouted, banging his gavel. But Darnell continued, "I hate you. I wish you'd died in your heart attack. The money is mine by right. I'm your only heir." Those words were his sentence. The jury heard Darnell's true nature, a man who considered my death his right, who believed my money belonged to him more than my own life. Bailiffs finally let him out of the room as he continued shouting incoherencies about inheritances and injustices. His voice was lost in courthouse corridors, but his last words had reached me clearly. "When I get out of prison, you'll pay for this." That was the last time I saw my son as a free man. The jury deliberated for only 4 hours. Guilty of attempted murder in the first degree. 14 years in prison. I left the courthouse that afternoon with conflicting feelings. On one hand, I had satisfaction of knowing justice had been served. A criminal had been punished regardless of family ties. On the other hand, I'd forever lost my only son, the only family I had left in the world. That night, sitting in my condo watching news report the verdict, I wondered if I'd done the right thing. Was it worth destroying my own family for justice's sake? The answer came when I remembered words Darnell had shouted in court. "The money is mine by right." He'd shown no remorse for trying to kill me. His only concern was securing his inheritance. A son who sees his father as an obstacle to his enrichment isn't truly a son. He's an enemy who shares your blood, but not your values. If you're listening, my friend, understand this. True love sometimes requires heartbreaking decisions. Protecting a criminal because he's your family isn't love, it's complicity. Sometimes, justice must matter more than blood. 14 years in prison for Darnell. 14 years to reflect on what he'd done, and perhaps, with luck, find some redemption in his corrupted soul. I was 73 years old. With proper medications and a little luck, I could live long enough to see if my son managed to become a decent human being. But honestly, I no longer had much hope. The days following the trial were strange. For the first time in months, I began taking my real medications. Raymond Mitchell had gotten me original prescriptions. And every morning when I opened the pill dispenser, I saw true pills that would keep my heart working. Within 4 weeks, my condition improved dramatically. The swelling in my legs disappeared. Shortness of breath was reduced to almost nothing. For the first time since the heart attack, I could climb stairs without stopping to rest. "It's incredible," I told Kenneth Brown at my next appointment. "I feel like I've been resurrected." "Dr. Webb," Kenneth replied with that professional smile I always received from former students, "your heart was literally dying bit by bit. Now that you're receiving proper treatment, it's normal to feel reborn." I was 73, but I felt energized enough to live another decade, perhaps 2. The question was, what should I do with those extra years Darnell had tried to steal from me? The answer came one afternoon in November when I received a call from Dr. Patricia Johnson, Dean of Wayne State University School of Medicine. Patricia had been my resident 18 years ago, a brilliant student who now managed one of the most prestigious medical schools in the Midwest. "Dr. Webb," she said, "we've been following your case. We want to offer you a position as consulting professor. Our students need to learn not just medicine, but professional ethics. You represent both." The proposal immediately intrigued me. Returning to classrooms, sharing 47 years of experience with a new generation of doctors, was exactly what I needed to give meaning to this second chance at life. I began teaching classes on Tuesday and Thursday mornings. Medical Ethics and Clinical Decision-Making was the official course name, but I called it How to Be a Real Doctor. Students came expecting boring theory and encountered real stories from 47 years in operating rooms. "Ladies and gentlemen," I'd tell them in my first class each semester, medicine isn't about memorizing textbooks. It's about saving real human lives with real families, real problems. Every decision you make as doctors will have consequences that last forever. The students adored me. At semester's end, they'd line up to take photos and ask me to sign their medical books. "Dr. Webb, you taught us being a doctor means being a hero," they'd say. No, I always corrected them. Being a doctor means being human. Heroes are in movies. Doctors are in hospitals doing our job with honesty and compassion. But there was something deeper I wanted to do with my new life. In evenings, sitting in my study looking at Victoria's photos, I began planning something that would give permanent meaning to everything I'd lived through. I called Notary Helen Rodriguez, the most respected notary in Detroit and an old college friend of Victoria's. She'd handled our legal affairs for decades. "Helen," I said when we met at her elegant office downtown, "I want to completely change my will. Everything I own, absolutely everything, I want to donate to the university." Helen looked at me in surprise. She'd reviewed my finances many times. She knew exactly how much my estate was worth. "Marcus, we're talking about $1.6 million between the condo, your investments, and savings. Are you completely sure?" I've never been sure of anything in my life. I explained my plan in detail. All my money would become a scholarship fund for medical students from poor families. Not just any students, specifically those who came from the same poverty I knew in my youth. Children of factory workers, domestic workers, laborers who dreamed their kids would become doctors. The resources Darnell wanted to obtain through my death, I told Helen as she took notes, will now save lives through education of new doctors. It's poetic justice. Helen worked for 2 months on legal aspects. We established the Victoria Webb Foundation for Medical Education, named in honor of my wife. The fund would grant 15 full scholarships each year, covering not only tuition, but books, materials, and even a small monthly stipend for living expenses. The day I signed the new will, I felt peace I hadn't experienced since Victoria's death. Now, yes, I told myself, my money's going to do exactly what I did for 47 years. Save lives. I died on a Wednesday in May 2026 in my bed, surrounded by Patricia Johnson, Raymond Mitchell, Sharon Harris, and a dozen of my closest scholars. There was no pain, no suffering, only a sense of completeness, of mission accomplished. My last words were for the young doctors crying beside my bed. Keep saving lives. Keep the Victoria Webb Foundation legacy alive. And always remember, medicine is love in action. My funeral filled the historic Hartford Memorial Baptist Church in Detroit. Over 1,200 people attended, doctors, nurses, patients I'd saved decades ago, scholars with their families, university professors, health authorities. Darnell did not attend. I didn't expect him to. On my tombstone, by my own request, they engraved a simple phrase: Dr. Marcus Raymond Webb, 1945 to 2026 surgeon. Teacher, benefactor, he saved lives with his hands. His teachings and his generosity, the Victoria Webb Foundation continues operating to this day, financed by the perpetual fund I established. Every year, 15 poor but brilliant young people receive the opportunity to become doctors without the financial burden I had to bear. If you're listening, my friend, remember this: we're not obligated to tolerate betrayals, even from our own family. Self-respect and justice must be above blood ties. True family is chosen by shared values, not by genetics. I lived 81 years and died with a clear conscience, knowing even my money posthumously continues, saving lives instead of ending up in hands of the person who tried to take mine. That's the difference between existing and living with. Purpose. Principles are not negotiable. Dignity is not for sale, and legacy is